Jupiter Broadcasting presents this program in stereo.
This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at Godaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash.
This week on the Linux Action Show, Cinnamon Desktop has swooped in to save us from these new-fangled fancy-schmancy desktops. But are we wearing Kryptonite underwear? Tune in to find out what kind of underwear we're wearing. Plus, why is Microsoft modifying the Skype network to run Linux? Then syncing your iPod with Linux has never been easier or more romantic, and so much more. Oh, this week, Linux Action Show! Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 2,008,008. This is season, 21, episode 8. My name is Brian, that guy is Chris.
Hey there, Brian. Check it out. 50-fold. Chris sent this in via the Linux Action Show subreddit. His local library runs Linux. Actually runs Debian, too.
Fantastic.
I have, from this one picture, you know how they say a picture is 1,000 words, Brian?
Yeah.
I picture that the library, like this tech went in there and said, hey, let me set you up with these computers. And then, he set them all up with Debian and set the backgrounds just because he had so much pride. I love it. Anyways, and honestly, Linux is the perfect thing for a library computer setup like that.
Totally is.
You don't have to worry about viruses.
You don't have to worry about nothing. Just lock it down really hard so they can't screw with it and you're done.
Totally.
And dude, I want to know, is he running unstable or is he running stable?
Well, by the look
is this like Debian testing or what?
By the look of this ancient gnome bar down there.
Probably was stable in 1993.
Well, remember it's Debian, so it's probably stable from 6 months ago. Oh, I'm just kidding. I love you, Debian. Seriously, I love you. Please don't hate me. Please. I know, right?
Yeah, it's a good
B-Man,
one. Yeah.
Big show today.
Really? Because, Chris, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, and we did the Ubuntu review.
Yeah, it was good.
And then next week we had Linux Fest, which was great
Fun.
but exhausting.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that we could have no news or anything interesting to talk about this week because I kind of just want to put my forehead on the table.
Oh man, you should have said something beforehand. We should have exchanged notes because I went the opposite of that. I put a big show together. No, we're going to talk about Cinnamon Desktop. We thought, well, since we talked so much about Unity last week, this week we should talk about Cinnamon Desktop. I'm sure some discussion around Mate will come up as well.
You know why we're going to talk about Cinnamon Desktop? Because it's
why, Brian?
So super important and it matters.
Well, we'll save that commentary for the segment, Brian. You know what else is Matt's coming up with a how-to?
I was trying to think of a way to make a verbal equivalent of end sarcasm tag, but I couldn't think of one other than just saying end sarcasm tag.
Because you got to keep the audio listeners in mind.
If I do the thing with the hands in the face, it just looks like I'm doing the Madonna Vogue thing. Or
totally
something.
lost on the audio listeners.
They don't know what I'm talking about.
So
they don't have a clue
about that. All right, well, B-Man, we got a ton of stuff to get into today.
I don't care, Danica.
Danica Patrick
Danica on the screen.
There she is, B-Man, and she stops by with a very special new promotion. Yeah. Now, the ones that we've had have been great promotions. We had 15% off, things like that.
No, those have been balls.
This
has been jank.
All right.
Totally jank promotions. In fact, we apologize they weren't good enough. What sort of great promotion do we have now?
25% off, Brian.
What?
25%.
What?
I know it, man. It's stupid. Now, you do have to be a new customer, so don't screw this up. But if you use the code 25MAY8 when you're checking out on a new purchase,
25MAY number 8,
you get 25% off your order over at GoDaddy.com.
Like, what does that apply to?
Dude, your entire order.
What do you mean?
So, say you got a whole bunch of things you're buying. You just do them all at once. Your first time buying, you apply that code, you're going to save a ton of money.
That seems like such a great deal.
Also, now, if you're not a brand new customer, but you still want to support the show, we have got our codes Linux and Linux20. Linux20 saves you 20% off, and Linux will save you 10% off your order.
Glorious.
Which is also quite glorious. So
Good
thank
stuff.
you.
Thank you, Danica.
Thank you to GoDaddy.com and the beautiful Danica, who I believe put a special word in for that 25% off promo. So thank you, Danica. See, I think ever since I started pronouncing her last name correctly.
Yeah, we're getting better deals and such.
You know what? She's warmed up to us way
Weird,
way better.
huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Go figure.
Yeah.
Who knew? Who would have known? Who could have known that?
Nobody.
All right, B-Man. So I've got an Android pick that is 'tis the season this week. I wouldn't normally pick something like this, but the new Avengers movie is out.
Oh.
And of course, you can get the companion app in the Android app market, the Avengers Iron Man. And in here, this is sort of like a background about Tony Stark and about Iron Man. It's like a little mini comic book
It's a
app.
little, yeah.
But it's free, and if you're excited about the new Avengers movie, I thought
it's cute.
I'm never gonna.
It is cute.
I'm never gonna really do something like this ever again. But it's kind of like this is like the one opportunity I get. Plus, it's actually been pretty well reviewed too.
Have you read it?
No, I downloaded it though, but I have
it's
not read
bad. It's cute.
Yeah,
yeah. It's worth a read. I mean, I wouldn't pay like $100 for it, but who am I kidding? I'd buy it.
It's free.
I honestly, if it came out for $1 or $2, I'd have bought it anyway.
Link
but
in
for
the show
free,
notes for
we can't go wrong.
So the new Avengers movie,
Dude,
the new
good.
Avengers movie, Brian.
Dude,
really good.
I just want to do a
Really
show
good.
about the new Avengers movie.
I know.
Dude, Joss Whedon just wrote like a love story to the Avengers. Is basically what he did.
The thing
it was
about
amazing.
Joss Whedon is we've seen it with Buffy. You've seen it with Angel. You've seen it with Firefly. He knows how to do an ensemble cast where everyone is fully representative and their moment shine through. Like there was a moment the Hulk had right before this big battle starts that is just like he just turns to the camera and just says 2 lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, oh, it just washed over me, Brian.
There's so much. This is not a show about comic books and whatnot. But I'm just gonna say this: this is the first time I've ever seen the Hulk done in comic book style on screen, because this is comic style Hulk.
Yeah.
This is the real, like if you read the Marvel comics, like World War Hulk and everything else, this is that Hulk, not Edward Norton's Hulk, not anyone else's Hulk, not the 1970s Hulk, which is awesome, but this is real comic style Hulk, and it was just. It was so great.
I won't spend any more time on it, but you're right. I really
all right, we got to talk about Linux.
Let's talk about a Linux.
Though
app
I was
pick,
watching the Avengers the whole time, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna think about Linux when this movie gets boring. Never got boring.
Oh.
I never got to think about Linux.
But you somehow still came up with a Linux app pick for this week. What do we got?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, well,
I was talking about the Avengers. Oh yeah. UFO Alien Invasion. It's basically a kind of a 3D version of all those old XCOM-y style games, and there's all the various spin-offs. But basically, it is a turn-based, top-down strategy game.
Oh, this looks great.
And it's pretty good.
Why have we not done this when we've done a gaming episode?
We've talked about it before, but we've never specifically
made it a pick.
dived, whatever the right tense for that word would be.
Swim in its ocean of beauty.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Honestly, some of the UI has some issues sometimes, but overall, it's an incredibly playable game. It's lots of fun.
When you shell out so much money for a video game, to have a flaw like a UI glitch is just completely unacceptable. I mean, right?
It is a free game. So
okay, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it's really a good game. The team's done a remarkable job on this thing, and it's
UFO Alien Invasion, which is over at. That was like you sneezed on my hair. You sneezed on my hair.
I think I'm allergic to your hair today.
So that's UFO Alien Invasion, which is at ufoai.org or link in the Shaw Nizzle.
It's really cool. All right. So also the random distro of the day is kind of a funky, cool one. And I'm going to say the name first, because the name almost stands by itself. It is Vortex Box, which doesn't really matter what it does after that. It's Vortex Box.
Nope,
now, here's what it does. It is a Fedora-based distribution that's basically, it's meant to load it up onto a rig somewhere, a little low-powered box that you've got. And it acts as a media server, specifically for music. So you load it up with that, and then you slide a CD into it. It'll rip it. Go online, grab the ID3 tags for you,
nice.
tag everything, and it rips everything as like FLAC and MP3 and all sorts of stuff, and then automatically makes it served up and streamed out so that you can grab it from any of your devices.
So this is just like a distro that's just taken a bunch of really great things and made it like, here's your media box.
Yeah, basically, well, here's your music box. I mean, you can do more than that with it, but it is really meant for music streaming and whatnot. And so if you really are into music, you're an audiophile, and you happen to have like a little net top somewhere or something along those lines, this would be kind of a cool little rig to throw it on.
I like this too. It says, of course, it works well as a back-end server for XBMC running Xbox, Windows, or OS X. It's got good support for Sonos, which makes sense. You'd want that.
You'd want that.
NFS for Linux boxes, DLNA support to play music, DLNA-enabled players like the 360 and the PS3. Automatic reindexing of Squeezebox servers too, which Squeezebox is another favorite.
It's pretty cool. It even supports Apple Talk. So if you've got like a bunch of old Macs laying around and you want to hit it over Apple Talk,
is that some sort of like communication? I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know. I'm just making this episode go. I don't really know what that stuff is. Yeah.
All right, B-Man, let's do the news.
What's new in the news this week?
Oh.
After the Avengers movie came out.
All right, Brian, the second top story on the news docket this week, XFCE 4.1.0 is released.
Yes, it is.
And this one's been 1 year and 4 months in the making.
Goodness gracious.
And I think the reason why I decided this week to put it at the top of the news list is just because I think XFCE is becoming quickly one of the most popular Linux distribution
It is
desktops.
skyrocketing. Yeah. Xubuntu or Zubuntu or however you want to say it. It's just climbing the charts fast.
And I have some more thoughts when we get to the Cinnamon review. But here's a couple of, it's funny because it's been a year and 4 months, but nothing like completely ground shaking different here. Things like new application finder has been completely rewritten and combines the functionality of the old XFC app finder and app XF run for which, if you remember their old app finder, it was a little
did
weak.
need a little,
New MIME type editors, a new window manager can be configured. Performance increases. Here, I'll show you some screenshots.
It is a little nicer. I mean, basically, they took old XFCE and made it a little better.
I mean, look how good it's getting, though.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really something. It's one of these things where they started with something really small and they're building up, whereas some of the other desktops start really big and they try to build down.
And they try and work on it until it gets good.
And XFCE's sort of been very fortunate that they've been on that track for years before all these, like GNOME 3 came out and Unity came out, and so they're just kind of at the perfect moment.
Right place, right time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it worked out really well with those guys.
All right, B-Man, the next story on the news docket has a few of us scratching our head. So it's been sort of figured out through some vulnerability testing, actually, that Microsoft has been replacing parts of the Skype peer-to-peer network with Linux boxes. And as many as 10,000 at some locations.
Jeez.
Yeah, we're talking at just certain locations.
It's too many boxes.
It's quite a bit. It's kind of actually represents a significant architectural change for the Skype network. So Skype is traditionally a completely peer-to-peer network.
Yeah.
And then you have some clients who, based on certain parameters, are elected to supernodes. And when some people behind NAT can't properly negotiate the right communications, they can go out to these supernodes, and the supernode can set up the connection for them and do the handoff, and then people can talk again.
Right.
And Microsoft is making it so that instead of regular old clients becoming supernodes, that only Microsoft servers will be supernodes, because the Skype network only needs a set amount of supernodes. So if you put if you build all the supernodes, they by default become the supernodes. Plus, recently Skype has made some changes to allow this because they've had some outages recently and they were kind of already going this direction.
Sure.
Here's the problem, though, is a lot of people are speculating that this could potentially make Skype more susceptible to wiretap, at least in the tracking sense, because you could now track who calls when, for how long, and things like that. So you went from to a network which famously has the FBI in several instances saying that Skype is unwiretappable and that it's hindered investigations. And now this new architectural change, you also have the fact that Microsoft was originally, however, is no longer a CISPA sponsor, and this really fits in well with CISPA. And additionally, the part that really bothers me is Microsoft has been granted a patent for wiretapping Skype, which is bad. Which they actually applied for before they bought Skype, because it's a general VoIP wiretapping patent, which is just great, but it has specific provisions in there for Skype. So
can I just say that sounds like a real dick of a patent to have?
I know, right?
Like, that's just saying I'm going to patent being an ass.
Thanks, Microsoft.
Seriously? I mean, that's not even like a feature. That's like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can patent that.
Well, there is some legitimate law enforcement reasons.
Snooping on you.
There's some legitimate law enforcement reasons. It is unfortunate.
But why would you patent that? Wouldn't you just snoop on someone? Like, if you're the government.
Do you want to know the sad answer?
Huh.
Is there's a lot of money to be made in stealing our privacy.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
So Microsoft develops the solutions and the government contracts to Microsoft to enable them to, okay, I get it now. That sucks.
Yeah, it sucks, right?
I hate that a lot.
This is mostly, this is all, do you call it conjecture when you take several in separate news stories and put them all together as one single thread? And that seems to me like you're just looking at the complete picture. But at the same time, it's also just conjecture.
It's like a chocolate chip muffin.
Pretty much. It's exactly what it's like. So, something for people to chew on. I, of course, am always looking at open source alternatives to Skype, but a lot of them don't have this peer-to-peer nature that Skype had that makes them more anonymous. So It's a difficult thing, B-Man. It's a difficult
thing.
All right. Next story on the news docket. A big release this week. Everybody's excited. GIMP 2.8, after 3 long years in development, has been released.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
They did a great job. There are some really, really killer features on this one too. I mean, so the big one is obviously that the new UI, the single window UI, is stable now. You've been able to get it before, but now it's actually stable, so you can actually get in there and use it pseudo Photoshop.
Here, while you vamp, here you keep talking about it. I'm going to load up. I got it here on my machine. I just don't have a very good shot of it.
It's pretty great. So that's nice. There's also a couple of features where that let you do. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it lets you do a really nice morphing of objects. So you can actually just outline an object and stretch out nodes of that object and to kind of resize it, and it kind of intelligently resizes it. I can't remember what it's called.
Well, here I got a shot. It's not an awesome shot, but here I'll show you. Here's so this is gnome.28, and one of the things that I like they did with this new
GIMP.28.
2.8. Yeah, GIMP. One of the things that they did that I like a lot is you have the option of doing single window mode or not. You can actually toggle it on or off. So if you're more of a fan of the older style, you can see it really kind of sucks in Unity. It gets all cut off. I don't know if you guys can see that, but like those screens
Unity does some weird things with it.
Yeah. But if you hold down Alt, you can drag the windows around and you can fix it. But it just takes
it just resizes by default. Pretty weird.
Really, that's actually a really nice reason to have the all-in-one window mode. See, now I just toggle this single window mode, boom, it's all together in one UI.
You talk for a second, watch this.
All right, what are you doing?
I believe it's this guy here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the cage transform.
Boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
boom,
I like
boom,
that.
Boom, boom, and then
you can tug it a little bit.
And it'll kind of just resize. Now, normally you need to kind of...
No, I see what it's doing. It's just doing it in chunks. So for you audio listeners, Brian has taken and just drawn this area around an image, and then he can tug on the various images of his selection, and it sort of bulges and transforms that area. It's slick.
Yeah, and it transforms all of the area to try and get it to make it look reasonable. There's a video that someone put up of transforming like a little lizard on the ground, and it just did a really, really nice job.
It doesn't really look that butchered at all. I mean,
it works best if you can get a nice clean outline of whatever thing you're working with.
This is really cool. I also heard that they're working with better color support in the development branch right now. So that's going to be even something I know people are really looking forward to, is getting that more like CMYK or whatever. Yeah. So all right, that's really neat. So there it is. The new version of GIMP looks really awesome. People are excited about it, and I loaded up. There is a PPA out there right now.
It's worth grabbing. Now, what was extra funny about this release was that it wasn't really made a big... The team that made GIMP didn't make a big splash about it. The OMG Ubuntu guys made a big splash about it because they noticed that the download was available.
They saw it on the FTP
It was
site.
up, but it hadn't been announced yet. It was going to be announced like a day later. They were getting ready for it.
They're
and
waiting
the
for it to hit the
OMG Ubuntu guys stole the GIMP guys' thunder.
Yeah.
The GIMP guys were pissed. It was great.
There is actually the top comment over on the OMG Ubuntu releases. We haven't announced this release yet. Thanks for stealing the joy of the surprise from us. Yet again.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But you know what? To be fair, that's a little, I would say, presumptuous, because OMG Ubuntu did a fantastic write-up, and because they did such a great-looking write-up, it then got submitted to our subreddit, and it's getting covered on the show. We're showing screenshots. They put the PPA in the article.
Honestly, the fact that OMG Ubuntu stole GIMP's thunder was yet more news that got GIMP more attention.
Yeah, that's true.
So they got way more attention.
And then they got a bunch of love in the comments from users, too. Like, oh, I love you guys.
It's just a giant love fest, really, but super awesome. Great release.
All right, B-Man. So let's talk some more about Microsoft kicking us in the face. Now, one of the things that we covered about 6 months ago on the show was the fact that Microsoft was going after Barnes & Noble for their use of Android on the Nook and violating the patents, right?
Yeah.
And then Barnes & Noble just came back to the mat, was like, you guys are patenting loading images. You guys are, remember, just like these ridiculous things, and totally calling them out on it. And they were going to take it to a fight. Well, that all came to an abrupt halt when Microsoft announced it's investing $300 million into Barnes & Noble's Nook division.
What the hell?
And Barnes & Noble and Microsoft are now in talks to spin off the Nook division, and currently that division will be a new company called Nuco.
What?
Because they haven't figured out a name yet.
Nuco.
But they've already decided they're going to do this, called Nuco, where Microsoft will work with the Nook team.
No.
Yeah. And Microsoft is discontinuing their e-reader software and going to be using and distributing the Nook reader built into Windows 8. And probably Windows Phone and crap like that.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm all for software being on more and more platforms. I mean, that's nice. Well, it makes it easy for people to move around.
Like
and
the chat room conjunctures. I mean, are we now going to have a Windows-based Nook?
Are they going to
drop using Android?
Are we going to have Nook with Metro or whatever it is?
Oh man,
that sounds awful.
Yeah, the Mook.
The Mook.
Yeah. So they plan. Yeah, it looks like they plan to spin off their business. Microsoft's investment values the overall Nook business at $1.7 billion, which is interesting because it's more than twice the $792 million market value for Barnes and Noble in all. So
hey, good job.
They
Nook
feel
people.
like the Nook is more valuable than the entire company.
That's pretty harsh.
Yeah,
that's pretty harsh.
We'll see.
Well, man, it kind of... I mean, bookstores are just going out of business right and left. I mean, we lost Borders recently. I mean, all the Borders just started shutting down all over the planet, and that was sad. So really, all that we've got left in most parts of the world is the Barnes and Nobles, unless you want to go into like a Target or a Walmart and pick from 13, romance novels and one Harry Potter book.
Right.
So really, what they're basically saying is, one small market share ebook reader is worth more than the largest bookstore that currently exists.
They are.
That's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
I know.
I mean, you might as well say that frozen yogurt is better than all forms of ice cream.
But it's
It's stupid.
It's no more ridiculous than Instagram being worth more than the New York Times, but it is. Instagram sold for $1 billion, and I think the New York Times is valued around $700 million.
That's also stupid.
Right?
Why are people stupid?
Well,
we need to start a website. AskBrianIfI'mStupid.com. And I will just tell them, yes, no,
that's
stupid
really
or not stupid.
All you do is just have it. You could just have it check a text file in the back end. As people get stupid, you just put their name in a text file.
Stupid. Yeah, stupid name. You're stupid forever.
You're in the text file. You're stupid.
You're in the text file.
All right, let's talk about something else that I'm starting to think might be a little stupid. And I'm sorry if anybody's listening.
I'm going to be clear about this. Before we even say what it is, I have said that this doesn't make any sense to me since it came out and since we first started talking about it. So continue and tell me why this is stupid, because it is.
Well, it's a good milestone, but the Tizen project has hit 1.0 and the source code and the SDK has been released. So before I go too far, everybody remembers that Tizen is a Linux-based open source software platform. Back in September, it rose from the ashes of MeeGo. The project has now reached its important milestone of 1.0, and you also get your SDK. The source code itself has incorporated enhanced HTML5 support and added location services functionality. Enhanced
HTML support. Diggity. Great. So what?
How much does that look like a cheap ripoff of Android to you?
No, you know what it looks like? It looks like a cheap ripoff of Symbian.
Yeah, but doesn't this look very Android to you a little bit?
Yeah, but Android looks like Symbian.
This looks more Symbian, right? This, to me, the menu...
That looks kind of Android.
Yeah.
But honestly, none of it matters because this doesn't matter. Like, I appreciate that these guys have put a lot of work into this.
Is this like the new feature phone OS? Is that... Whoa, look at all those comments. Woo! I mean, I just don't... I guess...
No, because there's already plenty of feature phone OSs shipping and figured out by all these different companies.
But the thing is, like...
No one's going to want this.
In a perfect world, you'd want this to be more successful than Android. Right?
It doesn't matter, though.
I know.
It doesn't matter. They went about this in such a way. Basically, all they did is they took MeeGo, and they're like, MeeGo, yay! Okay, let's go the Microsoft route and make everything Metro, and everything's just JavaScript sitting on top, and then we'll just have a lot of JavaScript things running.
Yeah.
That's what Tizen is, and... So I know there's more to it than that. There really is, but that's the gist of it. That's the idea behind it. It's a web front end platform. So
you know what?
Why?
You know why?
Why? That's going to be about as amazing as Chrome OS running on a Chromebook, where you can do nothing but run a web page. And yes, some people are doing it, but not more than like 12.
Well,
not really.
I think we need a open platform that's available for these smaller, like smart devices and things like that.
But this is going to require something pretty hefty to run.
I'm putting my hope in the WebOS egg basket, hoping that
Open
WebOS is, to me, a platform that already has some support behind it, at least in Mindshare. It's got a name for it, and the name is what everybody says about WebOS is, oh yeah, I heard that's a great OS, but you
can't get a good piece of hardware for it, so never mind.
That is a great place to be.
Yeah.
Not from a, we are the result of several aborted projects that have been merged into one, and now we've hit 1.0. And there's a bunch of companies behind us whose commitment is fairly nebulous.
Now, here's something that's just kind of interesting. If you're a developer, and let's say you make Angry Birds. Let's say you're a guy that makes...
Sweet.
Let's say not Angry Birds, but you're Chris, and you're making a hot dog flinger, right? So it's the same idea. You fling hot dogs at a bunch of angry pigs.
Right down a hallway.
Right down a hallway.
Uh-huh.
But you're a bad person. You're a very bad person.
What?
So let's say you want to develop it for these Tizen-based devices.
Yeah, I do, Brian.
Okay, great. So you're going to have a hard time developing it for other things as well. Even though it's JavaScript and everything like that, you're going to have to kind of customize it for that particular device. Well, you do have to.
Okay.
Now, the nice part about WebOS is the current Open WebOS framework, and I believe it's Enyo, I can't remember the exact code name for it, has a nice version that you can run in your web browser, embed in your web page, run on multiple devices. So it's not tied down to WebOS itself. So you can develop a really slick WebOS app that you can distribute on iPhone and Android and everything else.
That's nice.
Tizen, you really don't have something like that. I mean, if anything, you're going to develop an open WebOS app and hope to God that Tizen is capable of running it.
Now, this has
that's the best you're gonna get with
Tizen. Has the support of the Linux Foundation too. They have the backing of the Linux Foundation, which I think is interesting. So it's got some big companies behind it. It's got the Linux Foundation. It could be that in a year from now we'll be looking at this and maybe it's sitting in a lot better position and we have a different take on it.
Hey, it could be. Weirder things have happened, but then again, I'm so rarely wrong that I'm going with Tizen is retarded.
Okay, B-Man. All right. Next story on the news docket for this week is I was going to make it an Android app pick, but I actually haven't used it yet.
Now I feel immediately bad. I don't want to call it retarded, guys. Just your efforts are misguided.
Wow.
Go work on something else.
Wow.
And if it makes you feel any better, stay tuned for the cinnamon discussion because I'll say something similar. All right, Chris, go ahead.
I didn't make it an Android app pick because I actually haven't used it yet, so I tried to, I review all the apps I pick, but I wanted to get the word out there because this was like a ding we gave when we did our own cloud review a while back. Is there wasn't a good app for it on your mobile device. You could get to your files on your own cloud. Well, now that's been taken care of. Now, I don't know if this is actually in the marketplace yet, but there is an APK in the link that we'll have in the show notes.
Cool.
And you put in the URL, you put in your username, your password, boom. It's a real simple file browser. It's got a real simple upload interface. I don't know if it supports the Android share menu, so you could maybe from another app share it to your own cloud. That would be awesome.
That would be cool.
And there you go. So if you're an OwnCloud user and you've been waiting for it, OwnCloud for Android, according to this article, is not yet in the Android marketplace, which I didn't think it was. But like I said, you can sideload that bad boy.
Awesome.
Sideload it. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, B-Man.
I love it.
Well, that's all the news for this week.
Fantastic. Remember earlier how we were talking about XFCE and how they were just in the right place in the right time, and they did such a good job of starting small and building up great and building something fast, and that made sense.
Yeah.
Well, here's something that's the opposite of that.
Oh,
we're going to talk about the Cinnamon desktop environment for a little while. Now, I don't know what Chris's particular thoughts are on this, but I have some. Now, Cinnamon desktop, here's a little background. There are some guys over on the Linux Mint team. They saw what was happening to the various desktop environments in the land, and they thought to themselves, gee, let's spend too much time redoing a lot of work for very little benefit. I can't fault them for this because what a great damned idea. Now, so they went ahead and they said, hey, GNOME Shell, that is incredibly extensible. In fact, you can do almost anything you can imagine in the UI of GNOME Shell simply using JavaScript. Now, I hear what you're saying. That's not a lot of benefit to JavaScript. It gets kind of slow and buggy. But really, when you're talking about simple little UI widgets and things like app launcher menus and the like, JavaScript actually suits very well to those tasks because it's not computationally intensive. It's more UI layout and a little tiny bit of logic than anything else. But what that means is it's incredibly flexible. You can make it look like anything you want. So you don't have to fork GNOME Shell itself. You don't have to fork the window manager mutter that GNOME Shell uses in order to make it do whatever you want, as is evidenced by GNOME Shell's own application repository, not application repository, more of their extension repository. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, but the Linux guys were like, you know what? Screw that.
The Linux Mint guys.
We're gonna Linux Mint. Did I say that?
You said Linux guys. It's kind of
Linux
general.
Mint.
Little
Yeah,
vague.
little vague, isn't it?
Yeah.
Linux Mint guys said, you know what? We're gonna fork GNOME Shell, and we're gonna fork Mutter, the window manager being used, which we're gonna rename into Muffin. Which I do like the name Muffin. I'm gonna be honest. The Linux Mint guys going with the food theme, cinnamon and muffins. I like cinnamon and I like muffins.
Right.
So you'd think I would be all on board with what they're doing, but yet I don't get it. I'm gonna pass it over to you because I want to hear your thoughts.
Well,
but that's
so,
the general background.
I can only
of what
say
this
nice
is.
things. The guys from Linux Mint sent me this great chair, so I can't really say anything wrong. But now, so think of it this way. So now, keep in
Looks
mind.
a little chewed on.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Well, it's a used chair. Yeah.
It's a used chair.
Yeah.
They found it.
Yeah, they broke it in for me.
Yeah.
Kind of smelled like farts when I got it, actually. So don't.
Weird.
So the cinnamon's been around since December. Let's just keep that in mind. And so the way I think of cinnamon is you take what's great about GNOME 3, and you take off what's not good about GNOME 3, which is the top shell layer, and you plop on cinnamon on top of that. You mix it all together. You got yourself a little tasty desktop treat. See, I loaded it up here on this VM here.
Okay.
And it's got the first thing is this is essentially anybody who wants to ride the GNOME 3 wave doesn't want to stick with GTK2 and GNOME 2 and potentially Mate and wants to stay current but doesn't like where they're going with the desktop. I mean, it's otherwise a very traditional desktop that's got what I think is a pretty decent menu, although I've had some glitches with it. And they've and then they integrate the best of the known desktop with Nautilus and all the things you've come to love. They've included support for applets, which is nice. They've got some interesting new menus and ways to manage the panels down here. Like they have this edit mode, and you can go in here and now you can modify it, and then you click here again and you can tab it, and now it's no longer modified mode. They've also integrated in media player support and the volume control, and what I like about it is it's done really well. You launch it up. Here, and I'll go get some music, and once I get some music started, now when I go down in here into this menu, it now has a little music note down there, and it's got the album art, and they're just like, you're kind of familiar with in Unity and GNOME too, but they just have done a very nice job of it. And you have your output device options right there. I mean, it's all very, what I feel like is it's much more configurable and modifiable than both Unity or GNOME 3.
Turn the volume off for me.
Oh, all right.
It's gonna drive me crazy.
Am I freaking you out a little bit?
Yeah. I'm like, what is he saying? I don't know. I just hear techno music.
My initial impressions are it's going in the right direction. I'm not positive it's a problem that needs to be solved, but they're doing it.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I'm like, okay, what's the end goal here? That's what I'm confused about. If the end goal is to provide a really more traditional desktop metaphor experience on top of GNOME Shell, which is what this is, because they're still using GNOME Shell, they've just forked it.
Right.
So, and here's the thing. This cannot be stressed enough. It makes no technical sense to fork GNOME Shell. There's no benefit there. The only thing that the Cinnamon guys are getting is more work. They're making more work for themselves, unless they don't like the technological engine changes that are forthcoming in GNOME Shell.
Right.
In which case, sure, fork it now before those changes are implemented. Yeah. But as far as I can tell, their whole thing is, I don't like the menu. I don't like full screen, even though the full screen is, you don't have to be full screen. I don't like things being on the right or the left. Well, just move them.
Yeah.
Like it's all super customizable. In fact, there are menus that don't look all that much different to what these guys have pulled off, already available for GNOME Shell.
Right.
And they're easy and they're super tiny. They took almost no work to build. Yeah. I'm not trying to belittle the work here. I'm just saying, why not provide a huge set of extensions? Because the problem here is if you're installing Cinnamon on an existing desktop, what you've got to do, let's say if you're running Ubuntu, you've got to throw on a PPA, you've got to install a bunch of different packages. What if you have GNOME Shell running at the same time? There can actually be some serious problems. So basically what you're saying is, I want this to be more difficult to install than it needs to be. I want this to be less supported in the future than it needs to be, and I want to work harder to get it there than I otherwise would have had to work. That confuses me.
I agree that I'm not totally convinced about the problems trying to solve, but what I do like is that it feels very focused on assuming that the end user is capable in the sense that I want to be able to click down here and edit my panel settings, and I want to be able. I like the idea that I can just restart Cinnamon. Now this probably will be removed once it doesn't need it as much, but there's technical aspects to this.
Love that. I love having a button right there. My desktop environment sucks so bad.
But
Please restart it constantly.
See, this is a menu I don't get in when I use Unity, as I can add applets again. And I guess what
you have it in GNOME Shell.
Yeah. Well, I
mean, again, this I don't see the point.
For somebody. Well, there is differences.
Because GNOME Shell stock does not work for me.
Right.
Like, I need to modify it. So I get where they're coming from. In fact, I'm like, basically what it looks like to me is they're trying it as hard as they can to make GNOME Shell look like XFCE. Which is totally easy to do, and I do at home all the time using stock GNOME Shell.
It's not totally lost cause, though. Since the code is open, they could either discontinue if they've branched GNOME 3. They could go back to mainline, or GNOME could take in some of the modifications they made.
That's so much work. That is huge amounts of work. That's like organize a massive team
Especially
and fund them for half a year to just try and figure out if it's even worth trying to merge. It doesn't make any sense to fork like this.
I was surprised at how quick the install was, at least on Mint 12 here.
It is quick.
It's like you apt-get install Cinnamon and it's boop, 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 done. I'm like,
because there's not much to it.
Well, that's kind of, but in a lot of ways, that's kind of compelling, I think.
Well, sure, but I mean, how often do you install your desktop environment, though? I mean... So
that's interesting. Mint 13 sounds like they're going to have different spins where one will be with Cinnamon as the default desktop it ships with.
That's good. I mean, if they're making it, they might as well make it default.
What I like, so here's why is it going to pull me away from the other desktops? No. It's not. But what I like is that if I wanted to stay current in the GTK3 world, but I wanted something that was easy out of the box, and it has some good solid direction behind it, and there's a community that is propping up, that's building extensions and building themes.
Yeah.
It's got some advantages to it, but I do feel like right now it is a little bit off on an island.
It is. It's off on an island, and there are some. You're right. There's some cool themes for it.
Yeah.
But most of those themes are all available for just stock GNOME Shell anyway, because it's a fork of the thing.
Yeah.
It's just forked. But I don't understand. I don't understand where they're going with this. Now, I think really what's happening here is Linux Mint's having a little bit of a head trip. Linux Mint, had a bit of a skyrocket in popularity. Mm-hmm. They got way up there. They kind of have a PC Linux OS. It's like you remember when PC Linux OS shot way up the charts, and everyone just started being like, "Wow, PC Linux OS, that's the easy to use but cool distro that we're going to jump to next." And then it tanked after a little while. I think that's where Linux Mint is right now.
But I think the reason it tanked was like it couldn't keep up with demand. I mean, what they're doing is the interesting approach though that they're doing is you can still do GNOME 3, you can still do XFCE. It's sort of like Canonical's laying in the ground and saying we're going to Unity.
Yeah.
And they're going a different route. They're saying we're going Cinnamon, but in 2 years from now, if development keeps up, Unity-based desktops and Cinnamon-based desktops could be the most unique distributions out there. Like they could be like, those are the desktops that are but in a good way, because it's sort of like what makes them different than the rest of the crowd. Well, they've got these really interesting advanced desktops now. In 2 years from now, they could be really advanced.
That's true, and I don't fault them if they want their own thing. Go for it. Go for it, guys. If you want to fork anything, I don't care. If you want to fork just the whole X server, X Windows, and fork it, and go crazy.
Do it.
Do whatever you guys want to do. I don't understand. Like, I don't feel like they've made any sort of interesting argument for why this exists, because there's really fast window managers. There's window managers that look exactly like GNOME 2. There are forks of GNOME 2.
I've heard people in the chat room saying they feel like it's slow. I didn't really perceive any
I didn't either. To be fair, it ran plenty peppy free. It crashed all the time.
I have had a few crashes.
And that infuriated me. But did it ever seem slow? No. And honestly, whether it was either on raw hardware or in a virtual box, it ran totally fine. It ran totally fine. So that's not a big deal. To me, the performance is similar to what you get in GNOME Shell. I mean, it's totally usable. There's not a problem there. I just don't understand why you'd make this in the first place.
Well, maybe we'll see. It's early. It's like I said, it's only been around since December. Maybe they're going to go in a direction that might pique your interest.
You think they've got something up their sleeve where they're like, man, we are going to blow them all away? Because right now it looks like they're trying their hardest to recreate recreate an XFCE 4/GNOME 2 look with a slightly different application launcher menu, which honestly isn't bad looking.
It'd be interesting if they took it, because like Unity, for example, hasn't interested me until just 1204.
That's true.
And that took quite a while.
It did take a while.
And maybe there's some sort of types of integration that that I just haven't seen yet. I don't know. We'll see. I really like that paradigm of desktop. Menu down in the corner. Here's my most common apps. Here's the submenus. Stuff over here that are applets. I can add them, remove them. I can right click. I can do those things.
Yeah.
Applications run down there. It's got some really nice. It's got some nice window management things where you can get all the windows up there. You can move them between desktops. All that's done really well. So the basics for what I like in my desktop are there. And honestly, GNOME 3 and Unity fail in a couple of those areas. So out of the box.
Well,
and I can make GNOME 3 much more similar to that than I can Unity. But
and you can make GNOME Shell and GNOME 3 much more similar to that than you can with Cinnamon also. Well, that's not true. You can get them both to the same point.
That's true. The HUD is great in by the way in 1204. I'm still using the I laughed about the HUD, and I'll tell you, because sometimes I just don't remember which menu some weird function is under the HUD. The HUD. So this is what. This proves my point. The HUD and the lenses are things that I kind of laughed at, and now having used them for a while, I really like, and I actually miss when I go to the other desktops. And that's an example of how that's unique features that Canonical's gonna be able to build into Unity that over time will get even better.
Yeah.
And if Mint does something similar with Cinnamon, then there could be some advantage to it.
That's where I kind of stopped though. When Canonical and the Ubuntu team came out with Unity, they introduced the lenses right out of the gate. We had lenses, and we made fun of it. Now, HUD came a little later, but they had a feature that was like...
The lenses just got good.
It just got good, though. Here's the thing. What's the not good feature in Cinnamon that is brand new and amazing that might get good later? I mean, there's nothing to make fun of because it isn't anything. Cinnamon isn't something new. There's nothing new or interesting there. What they did is they forked GNOME Shell.
Yeah.
And they forked the window manager of GNOME Shell for some god-awful reason and named it Muffin, which I like. If anything, the Mutter people need to rename Mutter to Muffin because it's a really good name.
Yeah.
I like Muffin.
I'd go for that.
Though Mutter's a great, yeah, it's great. But there's no new feature. There's no like fancy new way to handle menus. There's no amazing new concept for browsing files. There's nothing there.
Right.
It's just they're trying to recreate the glory days using a newer technology, but they're not using it in such a way that is maintainable. They're doing it in such a way that is going to push them down
I think you did just indirectly nail it. That's exactly what the inspiration is to keep the desktop paradigm we know and love, but just move it forward to the new infrastructure, to the new back end.
To a new infrastructure of today, but not tomorrow. That's the problem with Cinnamon. It's going to be damn near impossible. It's not impossible, but it's going to be such a huge monumental undertaking to keep it up to date with the latest and greatest technology, that being whatever happens with GNOME 3 and GNOME Shell in the future, because they're forking. Forking in this sense makes no sense because GNOME Shell was designed to be extensible. It was designed for this purpose. It was designed so that these guys could come in and make Cinnamon.
What about a year if they look at it and say, well, all these things with Cinnamon, I think with this patch or that patch, or maybe without even these patches, we could just lay it right on top of GNOME.
Yeah.
Then do you have less of a problem with it?
If they're just releasing a whole bunch of extensions and modifications,
is one big package. You remember?
Yes, totally.
Simian used to do that. Remember, you could get Simian GNOME desktop and it would download and customize all the stuff.
And not only do I not have a problem with it, I think it's a great idea because GNOME Shell is a great piece of tech.
Yeah.
And it's so flexible. Why not provide people with a really unique experience for your own desktop? And I think the Mint using GNOME Shell with they could still call it Cinnamon desktop experience or something like that, where it makes it look exactly like that, works just like that, adds a whole bunch of features and apps, but just keep in line with the existing tech. Don't branch completely from the projects because then you're going to cause more work.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years down the line, your users are going to be stuck with your garbage that is going to be over here when GNOME Shell is going to be way the heck up here and off to the side and doing something awesome. It just doesn't make any sense. Pool your resources, do less work, get more done. That's the value of open source. Not so that you can fork every other afternoon and code yourself into a corner. This is one of the things that actually frustrates me about so many open source developers and projects. It's like they simply do not understand the benefits of open source. Well, from an open source model,
it's like a difference of opinion that is usually at the cause of, I don't think it should be done like that. And then they branch off. And the problem is when somebody comes to that point, they fundamentally believe that the other approach is the wrong approach, and so therefore it doesn't matter because they're doing it wrong. I'm going to go off and do it on my own. And it's like this thing. I don't think
awful.
It's yeah.
It's just like I love variety. I love choice. Heck, I mean, look at the window managers I use. I mean, I mostly use Xmonad right now. I was using Awesome for a while, but now I'm back to Xmonad. Why? I don't know, because I liked the shortcuts better.
You know what we should say is if people are curious to get our thoughts, our takes on like XFCE desktop, let us know if you want to hear an action review. Because I don't know if we've actually ever reviewed XFCE on the show.
We have.
So if you would like us to see us do that, leave a comment. Otherwise, I think we'll probably be done with desktops for a little while. I don't know.
I think so. Well, there's a lot of desktop just brain breakdown. There's a lot of new releases coming up right now. I mean, we got Fedora hitting there with their big giant spicy wiener pretty soon. So that's gonna be fun. But
did you see like spherical cow or something?
Is the next one spherical cow?
Is that what it was? Right? It was spherical cow.
It's a circular spherical cow, I think is what it was.
That makes me think of a butt sphincter. Does it make you think of a butt sphincter?
Oh man, dude, we gotta save it for the review. I don't want to get started on it. I've got so much.
Was that your first reaction when you heard it?
My first reaction. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
I can't.
Because it was mine. I'm just saying.
Man, yeah, no. I think. All right. I think you can wager a guess what my first reaction was.
All right. Okay.
It's just. Yeah.
Well, all right. So is that everything you got there? You done? You good? So that's the Linux Action Show's look at the Cinnamon desktop. Now, next up. What? So stupid. I know it's. Next up, Matt's going to be in with another System 76 sponsored how-to segment. He's going to show you how to sync an old school iPod with your Linux desktop, which surprisingly is a very common question that comes into the show. I think a lot of people have like hand-me-down or old iPods sitting around in their drawers.
Free, yeah.
Yeah, and you want to sync them
work.
Up. So Matt's here, and System 76 again rocking the support of Linux Action Show, and sent us a wild dog performance that Matt bangs through all of these how-tos on. So thanks to them. Take it away, Matt.
Today, we're going to be talking about MP3 players, Ubuntu, and what are the options as far as making that happen. And now, when I'm talking about MP3 players, I'm talking about like your iPod, your Creative Zen, the various music players they have out there. Now, for people that have iPhones and things of that sort, you're going to find that your options are limited as far as syncing music up. There was a time before the 4.0 release of iOS, amongst other releases then thereafterward, that you could sync up an iPhone pretty easily. Unfortunately, that time is now past, and that's simply not going to happen. However, if you frequent eBay and you are willing to pick up a very cheap, I think I got this I think it's first or second, probably second or third generation iPod. I'll figure it out and put it in the show notes, whatever generation it is. I got it for like $15 and I charged it, and it is brand spanking new. Well, it's actually used. Again, I got it for $15, but it works pretty well. And the beauty of it is that you're not having to deal with the frequent updates that an iOS device would have. Now, I know what you're saying. Why aren't you using Android, or why don't you go buy one of the other more compatible music players? The reason for that is because it's cheap. If you lose it, you're not going to cry, versus me dropping $30 or $40 on a nicer music player that's more compatible. And frankly, they're more available. I can get these pretty much anywhere. A lot of the Creative or iRiver devices aren't as readily available as the older iPods. I literally garage sales. I mean, you can find these everywhere, but I suggest eBay. So we're going to go ahead and jump back over to the screen here. I'm going to plug in this brand new iPod into Ubuntu. And it will immediately pop up with, well, almost immediately, it will pop up with our little file system here. A lot of people like to turn this off because they don't necessarily want that file system popping up all the time. Personally, I like to leave it on just because it allows me to see what's going on. Not to mention, I can also add photos to it easily, and so I don't see any point in fooling with it. So I'm going to just close the window, and I have Banshee installed. I'm going to open up Banshee, and it will say, hey, you've got a music player in here. I'm going to call it 1.9 gigabyte file system. Not real exciting. Let's give that a cool name, like, I don't know. I like Ghetto Pod myself. So what I did is I right-clicked on it, and I chose, let it catch up here. Whoop. It freeze up on me. No. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay, no. Awesome. Ghetto. See, this is a lesson learned here, folks. Don't ever call your device Ghetto Pod, because you will pay a dire price for it. Let's reopen Banshee and give that another whirl. Okay. Yes, I didn't like that. Did not like the word Godapod. Let's call it Pod-O-Matic. And I will... Yeah, that worked. Okay. So to do that, all I did is I selected the device itself, right-clicked on it, select Device Properties, and gave it a really lame name. That seemed to work out pretty well. And speaking of lame, did you know that they actually use lame to encode MP3s? No pun intended, but yeah, it's kind of a neat little fact that you're probably thinking, wow, what has this got to do with iPods? It doesn't, but it's cool. All right, so we're going to hit close on that, and we're going to jump down to music. Oh my gosh, I have nothing on here. That sucks. Okay, so how can we get music synced up with this iPod? Now, this is the point in time where I say going with maybe an Android device or going with another more compatible music device might be a better benefit if you're willing to spend $20 or $30, because you can sync music to this iPod, but if you sync a playlist to it, it's an all or nothing kind of deal. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to choose, with the Podomatic selected, Music, Manage, and I'm going to choose Sync Entire Library. Now, I could choose to sync Cool Tunes, but if I do that, it's only going to sync Cool Tunes, and then from that point on, when I go to sync other stuff, it's going to literally list like just one or two songs that are in that library. So generally, I choose Sync Entire Library, and I'm going to do a manual sync. So I'm going to come up here to the top, hit Sync. It's going to do some wonderful, cool things there. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop. Okay. And it will do its little deal. And don't worry, when you screw up your iPod, and you will, because everybody does, I'll show you how to fix it, so don't sweat that. All right, so it's got some music all selected here, and that's cool. I've got some interesting taste in music. We got the Descendants. We're rocking with Leonard Skinner and Golden Earring for old-timers. Flogging Molly, Simon and Garfunkel, and a little more Flogging Molly. So, got our music on here, but I want to do a playlist. Now, I could try to drag, like, this playlist onto my Podomatic, but if I do that, again, it's going to overwrite what's already over there, so I don't recommend doing that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to right-click Podomatic, which is just the name of the iPod. I'm going to create a new playlist. I'm going to call it, and then I'm going to hit the Enter key, and that's it'll actually show up like that on your iPod. It's kind of cool. Now I'm going to add some music to it. Click back up to music. I'm going to select Flogging Molly and the Descendants. I'm going to, holding the control key, click 1, click 2, drag to, and now you will see a number 2 appearing next to, which is kind of cool. So now we've got music playing. Does it play? Yes, it does. And more importantly, when I go to disconnect my Podomatic, I click the disconnect button, and it will now show me, you won't be able to see this, but when I go to my playlists, it will actually show what I got going on there. Now, more importantly, if I go to my artists and albums, it will have everything on there for me as well. So that's pretty awesome. Now, one thing I would recommend is when you're naming playlists and things like that, don't use spaces in between words. It may or may not work. I've actually had issues to where I've screwed my iPod up enough to where I had to then format it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that using Linux and science. All right, so G parted. Okay, G parted, and and I may actually have to unmount the iPod first. Okay, let's do that then. Boop. Replug it back in and do a fresh mount, to which our file system will then pop back up. I will say that's wonderful, don't care. I'm going to go to G parted, not to be confused with departed. Nothing's left us yet here. And it will now do its little deal. Now, when you're using gparted, here's a real important tip. You're not going to accidentally format the hard drive you're using right now. A lot of people are freaking out about that. Unless you're in a live disk, it's not going to happen. That being said, if you use more than one hard drive or more than one partition, oh yeah, you can absolutely hose that. So really pay attention to what you're selecting when you come up to devices and look at the device storage capacity. I'm going to wager that 1.89 is probably the iPod. By gosh, it is. And as you can see here, it's using FAT32, which is definitely not something I'm using for any type of modern file system on anything other than a music device. But it's got a key next to it, so I need to make sure that this is writable. I'm going to right-click that. I'm going to unmount it. And it's going to do some magic stuff here. Cool, we're all done. Now I'm going to make my iPod suck a lot less. Basically, that's going to restore this sucker to just like you would in iTunes, to where, oh, wow, I've hosted my iPod and I need to get it back to factory conditions. With older iPods, you can do this with Gparted. I'm going to right-click, Format to, FAT32. Super simple, super quick. Hit the check mark for apply. Am I sure? I am crazy sure. I'm going to hit yes. It's all done. Whoop-de-doo. Now, here's where it gets cool. I'm looking at it, all brand new and fresh. Close. Unplug my device, and when I look at it, it's going to immediately ask me it's going to reboot, and then it's going to ask me which language I would like to choose. It's literally reset my iPod after I screwed it up because I got creative with playlists. It's going to happen. So what's the lesson learned here, and why are we looking at these older iPods versus the newer iPhones and Android devices and things like that? I have an iPhone. Don't hate me, but I do. It's just the device I have to use for other aspects of my work. Unfortunately, the only way to get music synced up with your iPhone is to use Ubuntu One. Ubuntu One is cool for storing files. Streaming music, not so much. It's almost there, but you're still working off of network connectivity. The caching is a little soft, and the app in iOS is it's a little under the radar. It needs a little more time under the sun. It's worth checking out, but I can't recommend it because it's not stable. Quite frankly, spend $15 on something like this, or better yet, go and get an iRiver device or one of the other devices that I will list in the show notes that are 100% compatible, or $15 at eBay, and get yourself an old iPod and enjoy the music without having to worry about, am I running up, network usage on your 3G, or, is the caching working right, or is it going to crash the app, or any of that other nonsense? Just keep it separate, keep it off your phone, or stick with an Android phone. But that's really where it is. For me personally, I'm a big fan of these little iPods. They work great. I don't necessarily want to run my battery down listening to music, so it's a good fit. The cool thing is yes, Apple does not support us, but we are able to make them work at some level. If you have any questions, you can always ask me, matt@jupiterbroadcasting.com, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. But understand that MP3 players and Linux are still kind of finding their niche, so it takes a little bit of massaging. And of course, if you screw it up, you can format it real easily. Back to you guys.
And that brings us to the end of this week's epic, mega, spectacular broadcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Let's see what we got going on here. Coming up, we got a Fedora review.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to say thanks to Matt.
Yeah, thanks
for talking about things.
Yep.
And I just want to say, Matt, you're looking much healthier.
Nice computer, Matt. That's a nice computer you have.
Yeah, it's a nice computer. Nice, fresh, new, shiny computer from System 76, Matt.
It literally is shiny, too.
It is really shiny. It's really pretty. Okay. JupiterColony.com is forums. JupiterBroadcasting.com is a website. Lunduke.com is my website. You can find us over on the YouTubes and the G Pluses and the Twitters, and there's links.
Which are a good idea because we do the show live over at jblive.tv, 10 a.m. on Sundays, 10 a.m. Pacific, and we announce on Twitter and Google Plus and Facebook when we do that.
We like to tweet and such because we're like 16-year-old girls.
And those links
it's really important
to those places. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, hello, I have new nail polish. Links to that are down in the show notes. But,
hello.
Yeah. So,
random little side plug. 1. Linux Tycoon hit 1.0. That's exciting. Lunduke.com. 2.
That's not the right.
Illumination Software Creator now has a free edition. I don't know if I've mentioned that on the show yet, but it's free for all the different platforms, and you can build web apps or Pythons.
Free like $10.
Free doesn't cost any money.
Free like an IOU for 30 days.
No.
Free
there's no restrictions. You just go and use it, and I'm a nice guy.
Free as in beer. But free as in...
I'm not really sure about the new definitions of free. Okay. Which, by the way, if you want to hear me ranting about that, go to lunduke.com and look at the top post.
Who doesn't like reading a good rant?
Right? It's not really so much of a rant, so much as I like to make fun of someone.
Oh, well then don't bother.
But there's a free edition, so now if you want to do web development or Python development in Illumination, it's completely free.
It's like $5?
Minus $5.
Minus $5. That's free, bro.
Well, 5 minus 5, yeah. So, and if you want to pay me money, and it's still pay whatever you want, you get iOS, Android, and Flash that you can also build those apps for. So, hey, knowledge imparted.
The more
right
you
there.
know.
Again, radicalbreeze.com, lunduke.com, all sorts of fanciness. Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, B-Man.
Is there anything else that you wanted to tell these guys?
No, though I think I'm going to make the more you know the slogan of Unfilter, which we did our first test episode on Thursday.
How'd that go?
Went good. We aren't going to release it because I didn't record all of the audio tracks, but it was a test episode anyways.
Sounds like it went really well.
It did.
Yeah.
I was actually really bummed because it was like one of those things where we sat down and we're like, well, let's just sit down and just kind of get our heads around what the show's going to be like. And then by the end of it, we're like, wow, we should release that. And then I was like, oh, well, actually it would have worked good because I didn't record my audio track. I got Chase and Metal Freak's audio track just fine and the sound clips track. So might have actually been a great episode. But that'll be coming out soon. We'll probably, in the next week or two, you'll actually see the
What's the
official
website for
first
that?
episode. Filterfree.me.
Filterfree.me.
And of course, the shows will be posted over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. There you have it, B-Man.
Fancy.
All right, everyone. Well, I think that just about wraps up this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. But please, tune in right back here next week.
No one can see us anymore.
Shake off the fedora, Brian.
I already did. Shake it. I can't because no one can see us.
Oh, no, we're good.
Oh, we don't have the whatever. What are we calling it? Pineapples?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Pineapple sounds good.
It does sound good. Roasted pineapples.
Oh, I love roasted pineapple.
I love roasted pineapples so much. A little cinnamon on it.
Mm-hmm.
I love cinnamon.
Yeah, cinnamon's great.